Masechet Ketubot, Daf Kof Zayin. We have a beautifully structured daf today. It's all about one subject. The question is, if a married woman is home and her husband went away on a trip. Now, the husband is obligated to provide her sustenance. If he doesn't leave food or money for her at home and she doesn't have food, can she then go to the court and ask the court to go and take from his assets in order to pay for her food? So can we collect from his assets in his absence? Or not? We have to wait till he comes home, and then he'll have to figure it out after he comes home. So the Mishnah that we're talking about already had a discussion about whether she has to make a vow or not, but assume that she can collect, whether she has to make a vow up front or not. But we're going to see it's actually a machloket, and we will bring this Mishnah as one of the questions. So we started with the machloket, and then we're going to have 7 challenges to the opinion of Shmuel, and we're going to conclude that the halacha is like Rav. So let's see. Misha Lachmedatayam Itamar. Rav Amad, Poskin Mazonot Le'eshet Ish. Shmuel Amad, and Poskin Mazonot Le'eshet Ish. So Rav says, yes, if the husband went away, she comes and says he didn't leave any food, didn't leave any money, then we go and we provide for her from his property. We do. So that sounds like it fits with the Mishnah. Shmuel says, no, we do not provide for her. Amar Shmuel, modeli abba b'shlosha chodashim harishonim lefi she'en adam maniach beto rekan. We're going to see a couple of cases where they agree. So this machloket is actually limited. It doesn't apply to all cases. So Shmuel says, Abba would agree with me. Abba is the name of Rav. Rav is his title. Rav Abba is his personal name. So Shmuel calls him by his personal name. So Abba would agree that we do not give her food. We do not take property from the husband's estate for her food in the first 3 months after he left, because a man doesn't leave his house completely empty. If a man is going on a trip, he's going to leave her with some money, with some food, and so that will last 3 months normally. So the first 3 months we assume that he did leave her food. Only after that, then that's when the machloket arises. Shmuel said, still you cannot, and Rav says, yes, you can. Okay, so this would be true, unless of course Rishonim talk about if there is a reason to think that he would not have left any food, even for 3 months, like if he storms off in anger, they're in a fight, and he didn't want to leave her anything. Okay, so then it might be different. Okay, but this would be a standard case. Most people leave. If they leave, they're going to provide 3 months worth of food. Also, everyone agrees if they hear a rumor. Sounds like it's a rumor. Some say there was some testimony, but let's say the shamu sounds like it's a rumor that he died while he was away. Well, once he dies, then she does have a right to collect from his assets. So then everybody would agree. The only question is, while he's alive, then the Bet Din can't just take from his assets. After he's dead, then this is his estate, so his estate has to provide for her. So that's a normal case. But while he's alive, can we go and just take his money without his knowledge? Okay. So the argument is when he went away, he didn't come back, and we did not hear anything about him dying. Rav Amar Poskin, Rav said we do portion food for her because he is legally obligated and all of his assets are mortgaged to her in order to pay for her food. And so if he's not around and he's not doing it, then she can collect even while he's alive. That makes sense. Shmuel Amar and Poskin. Shmuel said we don't. Why? There are 2 sub-reasons within Shmuel why Shmuel might say that. My Tama, Rav Zavid Amar emaserare at Pesach. Rav Zavid says because we assume that it's likely that he gave her a bundle of money before he left on the trip. Right? Usually, if a guy's going to go away, he's going to make sure he provides for her, and therefore we're not going to go and take his money because, this is a matter of dispute whether he left money and then we don't have a right. She doesn't have a right to collect or not. So that's Rav Zavid's reason. Rav Papa said, no, even if he didn't leave money, it could be that before he left, he said, listen, I'm not providing food for you anymore, and you keep your wages. And that's a deal we saw that people can make. She will keep her wages, and he does not going to provide for her food. So maybe he said that, and if that's true, then let her just go and keep her wages and provide for herself. So for either of these 2 reasons, Shmuel said she may very well have enough to provide for herself, and so we, as a bet din, we don't know better, and so we can't go and take his assets without him here to defend himself. Okay, my benayu. What would be a practical difference between the reasoning of Rav Zavid and Rav Papa? One would be if she's an adult, the wife is an adult, and she makes money, but not enough to provide for her needs. She only has a low-paying job, not enough for her basic food. Well, in that case, according to Rav Papa, even if he did say that you can go and keep your wages, and I'm not providing for you. Well, if her wages are not enough, then the husband still has an obligation to provide for her. So in that case, Shmuel would agree that we would take from his assets. Whereas if it's according to Rav Zavid, that maybe he gave her a bundle of money because she is an adult, it could very likely be that he did give her a bundle of money, and so according to Rav Zavid's reasoning, even if she does not make enough in her own wages, we still would not let her give her food from his estate. Not estate, he's alive, but from his money, because he very well may have given her this bundle of money. Or the other way around, if the wife is a minor, the difference is that usually people aren't going to give a minor money because they're not responsible with it. So in that case, we do not assume that he gave her a bundle of money. So according to Rav Zavid, if she's a minor, then even according to Shmuel, we would take from his assets and give her and provide for her. Whereas if she's a minor and v'safka, and she makes money and she does well enough to cover her own needs, well, then in that case, according to Papa, we would not provide for her because she can cover her own expenses. Maybe he said, you keep your wages, you take care of yourself. So in that case, it would be the opposite of this first nafkamina. According to the Papa, we would not provide for her because she's providing for herself. According to Rav Zavid, since she's a ketana, we don't assume that he gave her money. So even according to Shmuel, we would provide for her. All right, so that is the machloket and the explanation for the two sides and where and when they apply. And now we're going to start with the 7 challenges against Shmuel. Shmuel will successfully defend himself against every one. The first is from our Mishnah, Tenan. Mishalach medinat hayam. V'ishto tovat mezonot. A guy goes away. His wife comes and says, hey, he didn't leave any food for me. I want to take from his assets for my food. Sachanan Amar Tisha Ba Basof Lo Tisha Ba B'Techila. Nechliku ala b'nei kohanim gedolim v'amaru Tisha Ba B'Techila uBasof. So we saw that there was a machloket. Hanan, he was the judge in Jerusalem, says she will have to make a vow at the end when she comes to collect a ketuvah. She'll make a vow that she never received any part of her ketuvah payout. But right now she doesn't have to make ketuvah. Yes, we do give her the assets straight away. Whereas the sons of the Kohanim Gedolim said no, she can get money, she can take from the assets, but she has to vow now when she's taking it and later. Okay, so that was the machloket. But ad kan lo peli ge'el shivua amezoneya binanla. The machloket was only about whether she has to make a vow or not. But everyone agreed that we do take from his assets and give her food. So that's a challenge to Shmuel, who said that we don't give her food, we don't take it from his assets. Shmuel says this Mishnah is talking about a case where they heard a rumor that he died, and we just established above here that if they hear a rumor that he died, everyone agrees. Even Shmuel agrees that we do provide for her because if he died, well then all of his assets go into the estate, and the estate has to provide for her. Right? He's gone. He's not coming back. That's a standard case of a husband dying, where the estate has to provide for her. That's one of the stipulations of the ketubah. Okay, so Shmuel explains that's the only question of a vow or not, because there's a rumor that he died. All right, challenge number 2. Tashema misha halach lemedinat hayam v'ishto tobat mezonot b'nei kohanim gedolim omrim tishaba. Hanan amar omer lo tishaba v'im ba ve'amar pasakti la mezonot ne'eman. Here we have a braita that starts off the same as the Mishnah, but then continues with another subcase. Someone goes away, the man goes away, and she comes to collect sustenance. The Bnei Kohanim Gedolim says she has to make a vow. Hanan says she doesn't have to make a vow. That's the same with what we talked about before, the vow in the beginning. But if the husband does come back, vim amar, vim ba, and he said, listen, I gave her sustenance, right? Before I left, I gave her sufficient funds, then he is believed, and even if she would have to pay back the assets that she took. Okay, so that's we're adding that point that he has to come back. Now, Shmuel said over here that this is talking about a case where they heard that he died. Here, obviously, she didn't die, right? So what's going on here? So first we answer, shemet. So first we answer for Shmuel, how come over here we're assuming that she can collect? Must be that there's a rumor that he died. Hold on, but he came back. So how could you say that they heard he died and then he comes back? And it says, yeah, in fact, that's exactly what happened. There was a rumor that he died. And because there was a rumor, that's why the court allowed her to collect from his assets. Normally, they wouldn't. So Shmuel is still right. Normally, they wouldn't. That's what Shmuel says. If they heard a rumor he died, then they would collect from the assets. If it should turn out that the rumor is false and he comes back and he said, I left her money, then she has to pay back the money. Fine. So everything is still good. We answered the second challenge. Now we're on to the third. Tashema. מי שהלך למדינת הים ואשתו טובת מזונות ואם בא ואמר שאי מעשה ידייך במזונותייך רשאי. The man goes away on a trip, and his wife comes and demands sustenance from the court. And in the meantime, we're going to see that she was borrowing. She was using some money in order to be sustained. And then, eventually, the husband comes and says, listen, whatever wages you made this whole time, you'll keep, and that'll be for your sustenance. Rashai, that's permitted. He can give her back her wages for the sustenance that he did not give her. But if while he was away, the Bet Din went and took from his assets, whatever they took has been taken. In other words, that they are allowed to go into his assets and take from it. And so here, this is another challenge to Shmuel, because Shmuel said they do not take from his assets. And the answer again is, must be a case where they had heard a rumor that he died, and that's why they took his assets, because after he dies, then certainly she has the right to take his assets. Turns out, no, he wasn't dead. Okay, but they thought he was, and that's why they took it, so that's how we resolve it. Fourth challenge to Shmuel, Tashema. Misha lachmedat hayam vishtot tobat mezonot. Betin yordin lin chasav, vezanin mefarnesin leishto. Aval lo banav ubnotav velo davar acher. Same case, he goes away. She comes and demands sustenance, so the Bet Din goes and seizes his assets, and they give sustenance to his wife, but not to his children, who he also owes and has to provide for. We'll see why there's a difference between them. And also, they do not take money from his assets to pay for something else. We'll also see what that something else is. But anyway, this is on its face a difficulty to Shmuel, because it does say that he has to, they do take from his assets. And in this time, we can't explain, at least not simply, that he died, that they heard he died, because if they heard he died, then they would take money, seize his assets also for his sons and daughters, because then his estate would have to provide for them. So it's going to be harder to say that. So instead, we're going to have two answers. The first one is Amarav Sheshat b'mashre et ishto al yedeh shelish. We're talking about a case where before the husband left, he appointed a third party to take care of his wife and use his assets in order to pay. In that case, since he appointed a third party, we can be sure that he did not, in fact, leave money. Now, what about this third party? He's providing? We're talking about a case where he's not. The third party is not doing his job. He's being lazy, not providing for her. And so, since the husband appointed this third party and was relying on it, surely he did not believe any other means for her. In that case, that's where Shmuel would agree. Okay, hold on, but then he should also we should be able to take assets also for his sons, because assuming he asked the third party the guy to take care of all of his family, right? He would have taken care of the wife and the kids, and if he's not taking care of one, he's not taking care of the other. So then they should take his assets to pay for the kids also. Why does this Braita make a distinction? And the answer is that no, maybe the husband did in fact appoint a third party to take care of his wife, but he didn't appoint anyone for his children, so we cannot include them. All right, it's a possible answer, but it seems kind of strange. Mai Paska, the Baraita says everything without qualification, just a one generalization, even though we're going to go and make these very fine distinctions in the Baraita. So this is not a very convincing okimta. The Papa brings back the case of the rumor, but this is more than a rumor now. There's one witness testifying that in fact he has died, and that's why the court is going ahead and taking his assets. Now, if you're going to ask, what about the children? So there is a difference. For her, for the wife, if she wanted to get remarried based on the testimony of one witness, she'd be allowed, right? This was special permission that the rabbi said. In order for her not to be an aguna, we can rely on one witness and presume, in fact, that the husband has died. So therefore, one witness also is enough to say that he's dead in regards to the wife, and therefore she can take money from the estate for her sustenance. But does not apply to his kids. But his kids cannot go and take his estate with one witness. They can't take their inheritance unless there's two witnesses. So so too, the sustenance that they would be deserving after their father dies, they cannot take it. So when there's one witness, it's very interesting. Distinction here, that because one witness is believed for a wife, she can eat, but the sons, one witness is not believed, so they cannot eat. All right, so this is a satisfactory explanation, and so we defended Shmuel. While we brought up this Braita, let's explain it further. What is this other item that also we do not take from his assets? We're talking about jewelry, ornaments, perfume for the wife. We do not provide. So we do take sustenance, but these are extra things that she doesn't absolutely need, so that though these things can wait. Rav Yosef Amar Tzedakah. Rav Yosef said we're talking about the communal charity fund would impose a tax on the community members, and everybody would be required to pay. So Rav Yosef said we do not seize his assets for the communal fund. Manda Mar Tachshit Kol Sheken Tzedakah. The one who says that we do not take money for his wife's jewelry, all the more so we would not take it for the communal funds. But the other way around, Mandama Sedaka, the one who says we do not seize his assets for communal funds, but if it's for jewelry, we do. Because we assume the husband would not want his wife to be degraded and look disheveled by not having jewelry or perfume. So even though he's away, we assume he would want to. But we do not assume that when he's away, he wants his assets to be seized for communal funds. So when he comes back, they'll have to collect at that point. Okay, and so now we get to the fifth challenge. Tashema yevama shelosha chodashim harishonim nizonet mishel ba'ala. Mekan ve'elach ena nizonet lo mishel ba'ala ve'lo mishel yavam. This Braita is talking about a yevama. So her husband just died, and he has no children. So for the first 3 months, she's not allowed to get remarried for 3 months. She can't because maybe she was pregnant with the husband, so she can't marry the Yavama. Because she's not allowed, she can't yet remarry, so the husband's estate still has to provide for her, because the Ketubot says that the husband will provide for her all the time until you can remarry, but she can't remarry yet. Okay, after 3 months, she does not get food, not from her husband's estate and not from the Yavam either, because at that point the Yavam is not responsible until he actually does Yibum and marries her. Sometimes she wants to take more time. She's I'm not ready to remarry. He is ready, so he doesn't have to provide until actually she comes into his home. Amad badinu barach nizonet mishel yavam. But if she does want to do yibum, and she brings him to court, and the court says, okay, you got to do yibum, and he runs away. He goes away on a trip. He doesn't want to. In that case, she does have a right to be fed from the Yavam's property. And so this is a challenge to Shmuel, because the Yavam generally has even less of a responsibility to take care of the Yavama than the husband has to take care of his wife. And here, even the Yavam, after 3 months, and after the court says he has to do Yibum, his assets have to pay for her sustenance. So challenge. So Shmuel would answer, this is according to both explanations of Shmuel. The reason of Shmuel that generally we don't take his assets is because we assume that he probably left some money around. He left some cash. Well, that would be true for a husband. Usually would leave money for his wife. Because they like each other. But Yavam and Yavama, they don't feel close to each other. They're not married, just a sister-in-law, and he has an obligation to do Yibum, so he's not going to leave her money before he goes away. So that reasoning would not apply, and even Shmuel would agree that yes, you can take his assets for a Yavam. And according to the other reasoning also, if he would say, listen, you keep your wages, and you feed yourself. That's why in the case of a husband, we don't take his assets because we assume he said that before he left. Well, that would be true for a husband where he has a right to the wages. But a Yavam does not have a right to his Yavama's wages. And therefore, there's no reason to think that, we cannot assume that she is keeping her wages instead. And no, in fact, he has to provide for her. And therefore, we are allowed to go into his assets. All right. And now the sixth challenge to Shmuel. Tashema. Haisha shelcha hi uba'ala lemidinat hayam. Ubat v'amra met ba'ali. A husband and wife, they both went away on a trip. She comes back alone and reports, my husband has died. Rasta nizonet, rasta go back ketubata. In that case, we believe her. Right, she can testify as such, so enough to collect the ketuvah. If she wants, she can be fed from the estate, right, for a long time. Or if she wants, she can get a lump sum, a payment of the ketubah right then and there. However, if she comes back from the trip and says Girshani ba'ali while we were away. Sometimes going away on a trip, brings a couple closer. Sometimes they end up fighting. So they got divorced while they were on this trip. She can receive sustenance up until she exhausts the amount of her ketubah. If she's eating $10 a day and her ketubah is $1,000, she can stay and receive money for that for 100 days, and then that's it, only that much. Okay, so here too you see that. This is a similar case. This is a woman whose husband is not back, and we do go ahead and take from his assets. In both cases, in the first case, we take it fully, and we provide for her for as long as is necessary. So answer, Hachin is a challenge to Shmuel. Oh, here also is talking about a case where we have a rumor that he died. In fact, she's the one that said that he died in the first case. Okay, so how come in the second case we also, and if it's only divorced, we also allow it? Maybe we hear a rumor that he died afterwards. Okay, if so, why? How come you have put a limit on it? Only the amount of a ketubah. Because she is the one that that caused the loss to herself by only saying that we were divorced and not coming back and saying he died. So if she had claimed, as is the first case, if she claims that he died, then that's it. He does not. Then she can take assets for as long as she wants. But by claiming that we divorced, that means she only has a right to her ketuvah payment, not to sustenance. Only when a husband dies, she can remain on sustenance for a long time. But if it's divorced, then all she can claim is a one-time payout. Therefore, she limited herself to a one-time payout. So fine, we'll pay out her sustenance, but only up to the limit of her full ketubah. All right, and finally, last challenge, Tashima. Kesad amru mema'enet en la mezonot. In what case do we say that we're talking about a mema'enet? This is a minor girl whose mother or brother marries her off, so it's a marriage midrabanan. And nevertheless, generally, a husband does have to take care of this wife and provide for her sustenance. So in what case, there is a case, however, that he does not provide sustenance. So what case are we talking about? It can't be when they're actually living together, because then the husband does have to provide for her. That's one of the stipulations. Even though she can go refuse anytime, if they are married now, he has to provide. Rather, must be talking about a case where he went away on a trip and didn't leave any money for her. She had to borrow money in order to eat. She got sick of it and said, what kind of thing is this? My husband goes away, leaves me nothing, I have to borrow. So she refuses, and now they're no longer married. And so this is the case that this Braita is talking about, and says that she does not get sustenance. In other words, the Beit Din is not going to go into his assets and pay her back for it. All right. Retroactively, the whole thing is annulled. Tama de me'ana. Hale me'ana yavinanla. So now we infer from this discussion that the only reason she does not get sustenance is because she refused the husband, no longer married, not even retroactively. So therefore, the Beit Din is not going to pay her back. But if she did not refuse, he went away on a trip, didn't leave her any money, and she didn't refuse. They are married. Then the court will take his assets to provide for her. That's a challenge to Shmuel. So Shmuel says, yeah, in this case, I would agree that they can for a minor who doesn't refuse. I would agree that the court should be able to take the sustenance. Why? According to either one of the reasonings that we applied for Shmuel. If it's because in other cases when they're fully married, then we suspect that the husband, we assume that the husband left some money for her. But here, she's a minor, and we saw people don't give cash to minors. They're not going to be responsible for it. So surely here, he didn't leave her any cash. And it's because he said, okay, you keep your wages and feed yourself. Generally, minors don't make enough to cover their expenses. We did mention before a possible nafkamina of a ketana that does make, but usually they don't. And therefore, according to that reason also, that's why the Beit Din, when they are married, nevertheless goes into the husband's estate and takes the taxes for his minor wife. But so Shmuel would agree in that case. But generally, if it's not a case of a minor marriage, then they would. Then Shmuel says that he would not be able to take from the estate. Okay, so Shmuel was successfully able to defend against all 7 of the challenges. So what's the bottom line? Mai have Allah ki ata davdimi amar maseh bad lifnei Rabbi bebet she'adim upasak la mezonot. By the way, 7 is a nice number. There's many sugyot. Shev shemata. 7. They have 7 proofs. So this was like a nice round number. All right, so now we have a story. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he reported that there was a case just like this, that the husband went away, and then she came and claimed her sustenance in front of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi in Bet Shadim, and he decided, yes, take his assets and give her food. But a similar case came before Rabbi Shmuel in Sipori, and he said, no, do not give her food. So you see that Rabbi Shmuel here was following Shmuel, or rather Shmuel is following Shmuel. Taheh ba Rabbi Yochanan. Now Rabbi Yochanan asked about this statement of Rabbi Shmuel. How could Rabbi Shmuel decide not to give her food? Ha lo nechleku bnei kohanim gedolim mechanan ela linyan shivua v'mezonei yavinan la. After all, the machloket that was recorded in our Mishnah Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi are both Tanaim, so they didn't necessarily have the final Mishnah, but they still had this report of this older generation from the time of the Bet HaMikdash, Hanan and the son of the Kohanim, and they knew that they argued only about whether she has to make a vow or not, but everyone agrees that we actually do give her sustenance, so he wondered, how could Rabbi Shmuel not give her sustenance? All right, so that means he supported the first, the Pesach of Rabbi that does give her sustenance. Okay, this is the same question we had before against Shmuel from our Mishnah. So Rav Shimon Bar Abba says, is answering Rabbi Yochanan's question, saying that we already explained this according to Shmuel in Bavel. We asked Shmuel, who agreed with Rabbi Ishmael, this, and he already gave an answer, reconciling his opinion with the Mishnah. Keshishamu bo shemet. It's we're talking about a case in the Mishnah where we heard a rumor that he died. That's why we took his assets, because we thought he died. But otherwise we wouldn't, and so that's how we can reconcile. But this was a case where the case before Rabbi Ishmael was the case where there was no rumor that he died, and that's why he didn't seize the assets. Amale patritu ba. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "Oh, you analyze it so much. Sounds like he's speaking rhetorically, right? But with that simple answer, you solve the whole problem by making this okim tad limitation that the Mishnah is only talking about such a case." He didn't accept Shmuel's response from Bavel, and so Rabbi Yochanan thinks it's still a challenge against Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, so you see from this discussion that we're going to be leaning towards Rav. There's another version of this discussion, just with name switched. Ki ata Rabin Amar, when Rabin came to Israel, he reported Maaseh b'lifnei Rabbi bebet Sha'arim velo pasak la mezonot. Lifnei Rabbi Shmuel b'sipori pasak la mezonot. So in this reporting, a case came before Rabbi where the husband went away and she asked for food, and he said, Rabbi is the one that said would not take his assets, and Rabbi Shmuel was the one that said, yes, you can take assets. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mada Rabbi shelo pasak la. Rabbi Yochanan asked the question now on Rabbi, because now he's the one that said no. How could Rabbi not give her food? After all, that ancient machloket between Hanan and the Kohanim Gedolim are only whether she has to make a swear or not before getting food. But certainly, everyone agrees we do take his assets and pay her. And Rav Shimon answers Rabbi Yochanan the same thing. We had this question, we asked it to Shmuel, and Shmuel already said that this Mishnah, this machloket between Hanan and Bnei Kohanim Gedolim are only talking about a case where we heard that he died, and that's why we seize his assets. Otherwise, we wouldn't, and that's why Rabbi did not. Yochanan says, that's it. You finished your analysis. You may give this simple answer that he was not convincing to him. So Rabbi Yochanan thought this was a better question. Okay, so we still don't have a final pasak, but here it is. The bottom line is like Rav, we do give food. I think you see something significant here about the structure. You see how it comes to a beautiful close, but all the questions that we've had, even though we were able to answer each one of them, but each answer, it makes it more and more difficult, because every answer you have to say, well, maybe it's talking about a case where he died. Well, maybe it's talking about a case where he left instructions, whatever. And so therefore each question chips away at the authority of Shmuel's answer. And these last couple of stories also, where Rabbi Yochanan challenges whoever said the opinion of like Shmuel. So in the bottom line, now we understand that halacha has to be like Rav. Okay. Furthermore, while we're giving Piskei halacha, here's a few more, also in the name of Rav, who said that a woman can tell her husband, listen, normally I would give you my wages and you give me food. If she says, I don't want to do that, I'm not giving you my wages, and I am not going to be sustained from you. I'll keep my wages and I'll pay my own way. It's her right to do that. It's generally not his right to do that. So before, when we said maybe he made that stipulation, it would have to be where she agrees to it. Okay, and finally, Hilchata Kevateh de Rav Zevid Bekunya. Halacha is like Rav Zevid regarding glazed vessels. Tamar Rav Zevid hane mane de kunya chivarevu kamesh sharu yiruke asire. We know that when you have something that's made out of earthenware, pottery, that absorbs and there's no way to kosher it. So if it absorbs non-kosher or for Pesach, you cannot use it. There's no way, right? If it's not kosher, you can't use it ever. You got to break it. You can't use it for anything kosher. That's true. But if it's something made out of metal, then it can be koshered. Okay. Now, what about this earthenware that has a glaze on it? So, do you say that we follow the glaze, and the glaze is something that can be koshered, or is it earthenware and it cannot be koshered? Rav Zevid said if it's white or black color, then it's permitted. Whatever they used to put this white or black glaze were something that was made out of a metal substance and therefore can be koshered, and it was not porous so that it didn't go into the earthenware underneath. That's fine. But if it's green, whatever they used to put the green on, alum or something, that was absorbent, and it would go through that green glaze into the earthenware and therefore could not be koshered. And this permission to use glazed earthenware is only if it does not have any cracks. But if there are cracks, then the forbidden food will go into the cracks and into the earthenware, and once again cannot be koshered. So this is actually quite relevant because nowadays, pretty much, most earthenware, china, ceramic that people buy are in fact glazed, and so depending on what exactly they are glazed with and whether they're chipped or not, this is a very relevant halacha. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.